When your will becomes unbreakable, even fate itself must bend. Inner discipline is not a checklist of rigid routines. It is the living current of your own energy, the refined force of will that shapes reality from within. In Jungian terms, this is individuation, the alchemical process transforming the hidden fragments of your psyche into a coherent, radiant self. Carl Jung taught that true discipline emerges when you confront your shadow, that restless undercurrent of suppressed desires, fears, and doubts. He warned that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. In this crucible of self-inquiry, you forge an unshakable core, a will that no storm can erode. Now, having awakened the furnace of your inner will and forged an unshakable core through shadow work and conscious integration, the true measure of mastery reveals itself in how you move through the world. These aren't lofty ideals on a distant mountaintop, they are living, breathing expressions of a disciplined self. Watch closely as these 11 signs emerge in your thoughts, your choices, and the subtle currents of your presence, each one a beacon lighting the path from mere intention to unwavering action. Sign 1. You hear truth before words are spoken. You have refined your inner antenna to pick up on the unspoken frequencies that swirl around every conversation. Most people filter the world through the static of surface chatter, small talk, polite pleasantries, inconsequential noise, never catching wind of the deeper undercurrents. But you have trained yourself to listen with more than your ears. You listen with your psyche. At the core of this ability lies a reorganized relationship between conscious attention and unconscious perception. Jung called the unconscious that which we most need to know about ourselves. By turning toward that hidden realm, by observing dreams, confronting your projections, and exploring the symbols erupting in daily life, you've strengthened the bridge between that underworld and your waking awareness. As a result, your mind is no longer confined to literal words. It navigates nuanced gestures, tone, and the silent tremors of body language. You feel the unsettled hesitation before it becomes audible. You sense the flicker of envy before it manifests in harsh criticism. You tune into the unvoiced urge to withdraw from a room when someone's aura shifts from warm curiosity to thinly veiled threat. This isn't mystical clairvoyance, it's trained discernment. Remember Edison hunched over his workbench as the filament sputtered and glowed. He didn't need a doctor's report to know the bulb was nearing breakthrough. He listened to the almost inaudible hum, felt the slight change in temperature, witnessed sparks dancing on the edge of visibility. Just so you have learned to interpret the faint hum of human intention, every time you follow that inner guide, choosing not to trust a colleague whose handshake feels forced, or offering support to a friend whose eyes carry an unspoken sorrow, you strengthen your neural pathways for deeper resonance. You graduate from the surface-level logic of words to the poetic calculus of soul language. You're not eavesdropping on secrets. You're honoring the silent truth that all humans carry imprints of their unconscious stories. This power to hear before words blossom into sentences is the hallmark of someone who has mastered interior discipline. You are no longer swept along by others' narratives or fooled by rehearsed lines. You hold yourself at a depth where authenticity reveals itself naturally. And as you act on these intuitive insights, your interactions become catalytic. You either steer others toward deeper honesty or you wisely disengage before falsehood takes root. Each decision further cements your reputation, not through loud declarations, but through the palpable integrity you bring into every space. When you trust the signal of your inner truth, you shift from being a passive participant in the drama of life to becoming its conscious author. You transform the raw data of tone, posture, and unspoken emotion into an empowered map of human behavior. Sign 2. You master time, refusing to let any moment slip into meaninglessness. In the endless river of hours, most people drift like leaves pulled by currents of distraction, buffeted by fragments of impulse. They surrender seconds to mindless scrolling, to idle chatter, to obligations that serve no deeper purpose. but you have reclaimed time as your most precious currency. This mastery rests on a psychological reorientation. You recognize that every moment is a node in the tapestry of your becoming. Jung spoke of the eternal now, the intersection where past wounds and future aspirations converge. By bringing conscious attention fully into each fragment of time, you unravel that tapestry only to weave it anew with intention as your loom and presence as your thread. Imagine Lincoln in his twilight hours, quill in hand, drafting the Emancipation Proclamation. He did not view the candle's last flicker as a fleeting convenience, but as an opportunity to shape history. Each stroke of his pen was weighted with purpose. Similarly, you approach each minute, whether in the hush before dawn or the lull after dusk, with the same gravity. When you wake, the first inhale sets the cadence of your resolve. When you rest, the final exhale seals your commitments for tomorrow. At the heart of this discipline lies a conscious choreography between attention and value. Rather than measuring time by its volume hours, days, years, you measure it by its resonance. A single moment of authentic focus can surpass 100 hours of scattered effort. You learn to ask what matters most right now and then direct the full power of your will toward that answer. This isn't rigid busyness or relentless hustle. Instead, it's a fluid mastery. You allow life's necessary rhythms, rest, recovery, reflection, to integrate into your flow. You guard against the tyranny of the urgent by honoring the sovereignty of the important. You set clear boundaries around your schedule, not as walls that imprison, but as gates that protect the sanctity of your chosen priorities. When you master time, you become a composer of experience rather than a spectator of its cacophony. You orchestrate the crescendo of action, the pause of reflection, the refrains of joy. You turn the mundane into ritual. The morning coffee becomes a meditation, the commute a corridor for creative thought, the evening walk a counsel with your deeper self. By investing time deliberately, you cultivate momentum. Each deliberate choice compounds, forging habits that align with your highest vision. And as with Edison's countless experiments before the incandescent breakthrough, you respect the role of persistence. You don't abandon a project because progress is slow. You honor the iterative process, confident that cumulative effort yields exponential transformation. In this mastery of time, you no longer lament lost opportunities or romanticize idle leisure. You know that every second is an unrepeatable gift, and you steward it with reverence. Others may marvel at your productivity. You know the secret isn't more hours, but more presence. Take a moment now to feel the pulse of your breath. Notice how this simple act, fully attended, can anchor you in the domain of time reclaimed. This is the second beacon of inner discipline, the art of living with temporal alchemy. Sign 3. In the face of failure, you choose learning over blame. Failure is a crucible that reveals the mettle of one's inner discipline. When setbacks arrive, whether in the form of a faltering project, a strained relationship, or an unexpected turn of events, you no longer recoil in self-reproach or cast blame onto others. Instead, you lean in, inquisitive and unafraid, because your psyche has re-engineered failure into feedback. At the core of this transformation is a shift in narrative. You no longer view mistakes as indictments of your worth, but as data points on the map of mastery. Jung described the process of individuation as the realization of the self, and this realization requires integrating even the parts of your story you once rejected. By bringing conscious awareness to missteps, acknowledging what went wrong, owning your contributions, and identifying corrective steps, you transmute pain into possibility. Consider Henry Ford, whose early automotive experiments sputtered and stalled countless times. He didn't bemoan the failures of the quadricycle or retreat from public scrutiny. Instead, he dissected each mechanical failure, refined his designs, and reimagined efficiency. His relentless iteration gave birth to the assembly line revolution, a testament to how disciplined curiosity can convert setback into seismic innovation. Your psychological mechanism works much the same way. When a plan unravels, you don't default to defensiveness. You pause and ask critical questions. What assumptions led me here? Where did I overlook a warning sign? How can I reconfigure my approach to align more closely with reality? This interrogative stance rewires your limbic responses. You feel the sting of disappointment, but you no longer spiral into shame or anger. You channel those emotions into focused inquiry. This does not mean you are immune to frustration. Inner discipline doesn't erase emotion, it refines its use. You feel the frustration as a signal, an energetic prompt demanding your attention rather than as a barrier. You harness that energy to fuel analysis. You chart the conditions of the failure, examine the roles people and systems played, and sketch new hypotheses. In doing so, you honor the Jungian ethos of making the unconscious conscious. You uncover blind spots, unspoken beliefs, and latent fears that lurked beneath the surface of the attempt. Moreover, you cultivate a growth mindset that normalizes failure as a companion on the journey, not an adversary at the gates. Like Ford, you appreciate the iterative arc. Each no brings you closer to the yes you seek. You celebrate small victories within the larger struggle. One insight gained, a process refined, a relationship mended. These micro wins become proof points that your resilience is not theoretical but lived. In practice, this means you keep a running journal or mental ledger of lessons learned. You review and update it regularly so that accumulated wisdom guides future action. When a venture concludes, regardless of outcome, you conduct a personal after-action review, dissecting both strategy and emotion. You ask which fears emerged. Where did I hesitate? How did collaboration succeed or falter? By treating your life as an ongoing laboratory, you reinforce the neural pathways that connect failure to insight rather than shame. This disciplined approach also shields you from the blame game that corrodes teams and corrodes communities. You model accountability by owning your share, inspiring others to do the same. In doing so, you transform organizational culture. People begin to value honesty, experimentation, and collective problem solving over scapegoating or defensiveness. The result is a self-reinforcing cycle of mastery. Each time you confront failure without flinching, your tolerance for discomfort grows. You learn to navigate uncertainty as a seasoned explorer, comfortable with the unknown because you know it holds raw material for growth. Your confidence emerges not from a guarantee of success, but from an unwavering commitment to learn. This is the third sign of inner discipline, your ability to transmute failure into fuel, using disciplined inquiry to forge progress where others see only defeat. Sign 4. Your solitude is a testament to strength, not loneliness. In a culture that prizes endless stimulation and constant connection, you have discovered the sanctity of solitude as the crucible of inner discipline. Where many recoil at the silence of an empty room or the hush of unfilled hours, you draw strength from walking alone through the corridors of your own mind. Psychologically, this mastery arises from a rewiring of the social drive. You no longer equate value with visibility or self-worth with approval. Jung viewed the journey inward as essential to individuation, the process by which the fragmented soul claims coherence. By intentionally seeking time apart from external demands, you confront the interior landscape of dreams, fears, and aspirations without distraction. In that focused stillness, you meet the neglected aspects of yourself, the shadow that holds both vulnerability and latent power. Picture Walt Disney laboring through long nights at his drawing board, sketching Mickey Mouse by the faint glow of a single lamp, undeterred by the absence of applause or the pressure of the public eye. His solitude was not a refuge from fear, but a forge for imagination, where discipline and creativity melded into a narrative that would reshape popular culture. Similarly, you use solitude not as exile, but as laboratory. You incubate ideas, wrestle with doubts, and emerge with the distilled essence of your purpose. This is not romantic isolation. You do not hide from human company out of fear or disdain. Rather, you calibrate your presence so that interactions become intentional rather than habitual. When you re-enter the world after a spell of solitary focus, you bring clarity of thought, emotional equilibrium, and a heightened capacity for empathy. Others sense the centered calm. You carry an unspoken affirmation that your power springs from self-reliance, not from external validation. Within intentional solitude, you also practice rituals that reinforce your discipline: morning pages of reflective writing, silent walks through nature, dedicated hours for deep work. Each ritual serves as an anchor in your inner sanctuary, marking the perimeter between distraction and devotion. By returning to these rituals daily, you train your mind to respect boundaries, teaching yourself that the value of time is measured not by how much you consume, but by how wholly you inhabit each moment. Moreover, you develop an inner dialogue that fosters resilience. In the hush of solitude, you learn to bear discomfort, restlessness, doubt, anxiety without dissolving into them. You name these emotions, observe their patterns, and invite them to speak their truths rather than suppressing or fleeing from them. This disciplined encounter with your own interiority builds a fortress of self-possession. You become unshakable because you have embraced the full range of your experience. Over time, solitude ceases to be a mere interval between engagements. It becomes the very source of your creative fuel. You surface from it like a diver returning from the depths, bearing treasures of insight that ripple outward into every conversation, every decision, every act of creation. And because you have learned to fill your own well, you no longer thirst for attention or approval. Instead, you dispense your presence as a gift, a measure of authenticity, integrity, and quiet power. This is the fourth sign of inner discipline: your ability to transform solitude into sovereign strength, using intentional isolation, not as punishment, but as a sacred rite of self-mastery. Sign 5. You transform fear into propulsion. Fear for most is an anchor. Its icy grip freezes ambition, dims creativity, and shrinks the scope of possibility. Yet you have rewired your response to fear, converting its raw energy into forward momentum. This alchemy of emotion is a cornerstone of inner discipline, recognizing that fear, when met squarely, becomes fuel for courageous action rather than a barrier to retreat. At the heart of this transformation lies a subtle shift in interpretation. Where many experience the racing heart and clammy palms of fear as a signal to stand down, you welcome these sensations as indicators of growth. You've integrated the Jungian insight that confrontation with the shadow, those disowned parts of ourselves, including our deepest anxieties, is essential for individuation. By deliberately stepping into fear's domain, you illuminate its contours, disempowering it through conscious exploration. Imagine Andrew Carnegie, who arrived in America with little beyond ambition and a chest of dreams. When he faced the uncertainty of the steel industry, he did not cower under the weight of risk. Instead, he harnessed his apprehension, marshaling it into meticulous research, strategic alliances, and relentless perseverance. His fear of failure became the engine that drove innovation shipment by shipment until he redefined an entire economy. You mirror this approach in your own life. When confronted with the challenge, whether it's the prospect of public speaking, a high-stakes negotiation, or the vulnerability of honest self-expression, you first pause and map out the landscape of your fear. What specific outcomes do you dread? Which assumptions about your limitations fuel these anxieties? By naming the contours of fear, you shrink its overwhelming shadow into discrete elements you can address. This cognitive reframing is only half the process. You then take decisive action that aligns with your highest values, using fear's surge of adrenaline as a catalyst. Rather than waiting for perfect conditions which never arrive, you launch forward with calculated audacity. The tremor in your hands and the quickening of your breath become reminders that you are alive at the edge of transformation. You step onto the stage, start the conversation, or draft the proposal, each act a declaration that your commitment to growth outweighs your comfort. Psychologically, this pattern rewires your threat-response circuitry. Each time you move toward fear and emerge on the other side, you reinforce neural pathways linking risk to reward. You build a lived conviction that even if an outcome diverges from your hopes, the act of facing fear itself, yields invaluable insights and expands your horizon of possibility. In practice, you establish mini-labs for deliberate risk-taking. You set manageable but meaningful challenges, reaching out to a mentor, pitching an audacious idea, or experimenting with new creative forms. With each experiment, you document what you learned, how you felt, and how you might calibrate your approach. Over time, these incremental confrontations cultivate a deep reservoir of experiential confidence. Moreover, you share this journey with others in a way that amplifies its power. When peers witness your willingness to engage with fear, they see a template for their own transformation. Your example becomes a beacon proof that the threshold of discomfort is the gateway to mastery. You neither minimize others' fears nor patronize their struggles. Instead, you offer solidarity born of your own tribulations. This disciplined embrace of fear also fortifies your resilience against future uncertainty. You no longer dwell on hypothetical worst-case scenarios. You trust in your capacity to adapt, improvise, and learn. When new challenges arise, your mind instinctively recalls past confrontations, each triumph, each lesson granting you the calm determination to act. Thus, the fifth sign of inner discipline unfurls your ability to transmute fear's paralyzing charge into the forward thrust of purposeful action. In every quiver of anxiety, you discern an invitation to grow stronger, to expand your edges, and to deepen your mastery of self. This is not fear conquered once, but fear continuously transformed each cycle, forging you into a more unshakable presence. Sign 6. Your consciousness regenerates through adversity. Adversity is not a detour on your path, it is the very path itself. While many see obstacles as interruptions to be avoided, you have come to recognize each challenge as a furnace in which your psyche is repeatedly refined and renewed. This regenerative cycle is a hallmark of inner discipline, the capacity not merely to survive trials, but to let them transform you at a cellular level. Psychologically, this ability rests on a dynamic interplay between tension and integration. Jung describes psychic development as a series of compensation processes wherein the unconscious offers its contents to balance conscious attitudes. When you encounter hardship, whether in the form of emotional upheaval, professional setbacks, or physical strain, you welcome the dissonance rather than resisting it. In that space of discomfort, you listen for the unconscious messages encoded in your reactions. Is fear masking an undiscovered strength? Does frustration reveal a longing for deeper purpose? By inviting these insights, you honor the compensatory wisdom of your own psyche. This regenerative pattern finds a powerful symbol in Thomas Edison's countless failed experiments before the light bulb glowed. Each filament that burned out was not a defeat but a curriculum. Edison cataloged the variables material, temperature, configuration, learned their lessons, and pressed on. His laboratory became less a site of trial and error than a living organism that evolved with every iteration. In the same way, you treat each staggering setback as data for your inner laboratory, charting new hypotheses about your resilience, adapting your mindset, and returning to the fray with a more coherent design. On an emotional level, you have dismantled the illusion that psychic wounds should be hidden. Instead, you excavate trauma with curiosity, exploring its lineage, mapping its triggers, and reclaiming its energy. You understand that the shadow, once integrated, becomes a wellspring of creativity, compassion, and power. This ongoing excavation keeps your inner world from ossifying into rigid narratives. It ensures your identity remains fluid, responsive to life's tides. In practical terms, you schedule periodic storm rituals, intentional practices that simulate or engage adversity in controlled doses. Whether it's a solo wilderness trek, a commitment to cold exposure, or a public speaking challenge, you deliberately step into scenarios that stir your limits. After each ritual, you conduct a debrief. What did my body reveal under stress? Which mental narratives broke down? How can I recalibrate my response next time? Through this disciplined experimentation, you build not only tolerance, but regenerative capacity. Your system learns to bounce back stronger, faster, more expansive. This regenerative ethos extends to your relationships and professional environment as well. When conflicts arise, you don't retreat into defensiveness or blame. You initiate courageous dialogues, leveraging tension as a catalyst for mutual growth. Teams under your leadership learn to view difficult conversations not as threats to cohesion, but as opportunities to deepen trust and sharpen collective vision. In this way, your resilience becomes communal, sparking a ripple effect that elevates everyone around you. The more you engage this regenerative cycle, the more you internalize the truth that life's greatest gifts often arrive in the guise of hardship. You come to expect growth from struggle, and when new challenges surface, you greet them with a quiet conviction. Whatever breaks may heal, and in healing, you will emerge more whole than before. This is the sixth sign of inner discipline, a consciousness that doesn't just weather storms, but draws renewal from their fiercest winds. Through adversity, you are perpetually reborn, your will refined and your presence deepened, ready to face the next trial with ever greater coherence and strength. Sign 7. Your goals emerge from core values, not external applause. True mastery of inner discipline is not proven by trophies or accolades. It is etched in the quiet conviction of purpose that beats within your chest. While most chase the fleeting glow of approval, likes, promotions, public praise, you anchor your aspirations in values that transcend any spotlight. Your motivation flows from an internal compass calibrated by integrity, meaning, and the deep currents of your soul. At the psychological core of this sign is what Jung termed the self, the archetypal center of a person's total psyche, organizing both conscious identity and unconscious forces. When your goals emanate from this center, rather than from the shifting sands of societal expectation, they become impervious to the whims of external opinion. You no longer ask, will they recognize me? But instead, does this align with who I am becoming? Consider the example of Mahatma Gandhi, whose ambitions were not fueled by the trappings of power, but by an unwavering commitment to truth and nonviolence. He refused enticements of conventional authority, forging instead a path guided by the principle of satyagraha, holding fast to truth. Even when millions watched his every move, he never stepped beyond the moral boundaries he had drawn in his own psyche. It was this alignment of purpose and principle that confounded his opponents and galvanized the world. You emulate this alignment in everyday life. You craft goals not from a desire to please bosses, outshine peers, or conform to industry benchmarks, but from a deliberate inquiry into your own value map. You identify what matters most, whether it's integrity in business dealings, depth in creative expression, or service to community, and you shape your ambitions accordingly. Every objective you set becomes a translation of your highest values into tangible action steps. This value-centric approach also transforms your relationship with success. You measure achievement not by superficial metrics, but by the degree to which your actions reflect your authentic self. A completed project that honors your ethical standards feels richer than one that merely garners applause. A personal breakthrough in self-awareness outweighs any external reward. This internal benchmark insulates you from the sting of criticism because even in the face of dissent, you remain aligned with the truth you have defined. Practically, you maintain a regularly updated value ledger, a concise list of your core principles and purpose statements. Before embarking on any significant endeavor, you consult this ledger. Does this opportunity resonate with my stated values? Will this path cultivate the qualities I cherish? This ritual of alignment helps you filter out distractions and commitments that might derail your psychological integrity. In group settings, your unwavering compass invites respect and forms the basis for the most productive collaborations. Colleagues trust that you won't compromise on ethics for gain. Friends know that you won't abandon your convictions for convenience. This clarity fosters deep loyalty and magnetizes the right opportunities toward you. Projects and partnerships that resonate with your ethos rather than superficial appeal. Furthermore, when challenges arise, conflicts of interest, Moral dilemmas or leadership pressures, you navigate them with the steady assurance that comes from knowing where you stand. You are not buffeted by competing demands because your why eclipses any transient what. This clarity of purpose becomes a lodestar guiding timely and principled decisions, even in the fog of uncertainty. This seventh sign of inner discipline reveals itself not in grand pronouncements, but in the everyday choices you make. What to say yes to, what to let pass. How to allocate your energy, attention, and resources. As you consistently align your actions with your deepest values, you craft a life that is both coherent and authentic, a testament to the indomitable will that arises when inner discipline and core purpose converge. Sign 8. You remain steadfast even when the crowd recoils. When the masses sway like reeds in the wind of popular opinion, your roots hold firm. Inner discipline instills an unshakable fidelity to principle that transcends social conformity. Psychologically, you've disentangled your self-worth from external approval, locating it instead in a stable inner locus of control. Jung warned against the dangers of the persona, our superficial mask we wear to gain acceptance, and you've chosen authenticity over adaptation. In practice, this means you're willing to voice an unpopular truth or stand by an unconventional conviction even if it earns you isolation. Consider Rosa Parks, whose refusal to relinquish her seat defied entrenched norms. Though condemned by many at the time, her steadfastness ignited a movement. You too uphold what you know to be right, whether that's ethical business conduct, creative integrity, or vocal support for justice, regardless of backlash or derision. Your resilience here stems from a disciplined exercise of self-definition. You regularly revisit your core values as in Sign 7, and you rehearse micro-decisions that honor those values in low-stakes moments. Over time, these small acts of fidelity coalesce into a reputation for reliability and moral courage. Even when peers recoil or critics sharpen their tongues, you remain composed, centered by the certainty that you've chosen your path consciously. Sign 9. Emotions serve you as fuel, not captors. Emotions swirl like elements in an unpredictable alchemy, but you have mastered the art of transmuting them into propulsive energy. Rather than being hijacked by anger, sorrow, or euphoria, you channel these forces with intention. Jung taught that emotional regulation is not repression, but conscious integration of the psyche's contents. You name your feelings, feel them fully, then dispatch them as dynamic ingredients in your creative and strategic endeavors. For example, when disappointment strikes you, dissect its layers: hurt, unmet expectation, loss, then repurpose the raw energy toward problem-solving or visionary brainstorming. When passion ignites, you harness its fervor to accelerate momentum on projects rather than allowing burnout. This disciplined relationship with emotion ensures that you navigate life's peaks and valleys with both authenticity and composure. Sign 10. You nurture financial intelligence with decisive vision. True financial mastery blends analytical rigor with bold imagination. You approach money not as a nebulous symbol of status, but as a quantifiable expression of value exchange and future potential. Jungian individuation informs this mindset. Just as you integrate shadow material, you integrate both cautious analysis and creative risk-taking in your financial decisions. Picture an investor who balances the calculated metrics of market trends with an intuitive sense for emerging innovation, much like Tesla's Elon Musk, who combines rigorous engineering grounding with audacious futurism. You too allocate resources strategically. You build diversified portfolios, yes, but you also identify high-upside ventures that resonate with your long-term vision. Decisions aren't mired in indecision because you've disciplined yourself to gather sufficient data, consult expert insights, then act with confidence. Each investment becomes a test of your inner discipline. You resist impulsive trades driven by fear or greed, and you steer clear of analysis paralysis. Instead, you establish clear criteria: risk tolerance, value alignment, time horizon, and you follow a structured process to evaluate opportunities. By doing so, you cultivate both material growth and the psychological security that comes from prudent stewardship. Sign 11. Your presence awakens others without uttering a word. Perhaps the most profound sign of inner discipline is the silent revolution your mere being can trigger. You've integrated shadow and light to such an extent that your energy radiates coherence and authenticity on a frequency that others pick up unconsciously. Jung called this resonance with the collective unconscious. It isn't charisma in the superficial sense, but a magnetic authenticity that prompts onlookers to confront their own unaligned facets. In practical terms, people around you feel held supported to either step into their potential or step aside. Strangers may confess hidden aspirations. Colleagues may elevate their own standards simply by observing your integrity. You don't need to preach or persuade, your life is the demonstration. This evocative presence carries both invitation and challenge, an invitation to become more whole and a challenge to shed masks. Now, as you stand at the edge of these revelations, remember that inner discipline is not a trophy to display, but a responsibility to honor first to yourself, then to everyone your life touches. This mastery is a living legacy, woven through each decision, each boundary you set, and each truth you refuse to dilute. Continue the work of shadow integration. Welcome the hidden fragments that still stir beneath the surface, for they hold the keys to deeper authenticity. Cultivate clear energetic boundaries. Protect your field from needless drains while keeping your heart open to those genuinely seeking alignment. Anchor yourself in long-term purpose by defining goals that stretch your will over months and years, not just moments. Maintain daily rituals that fortify your core, reflective journaling at dawn, intentional pauses before every major choice, and solitude retreats that renew your resolve. Let each practice be a brick laid in the foundation of your unbreakable will. And always remember, this journey is never complete. With every layer of the self you master, a new horizon unfolds. So pause for a moment now in the quiet pulse of your own becoming and ask yourself, what will you choose to master next?